Okay, welcome everyone to the work session of the Poquoson City Council. This is Monday, March 11th, and we're here to talk about the letter from FEMA concerning the flood insurance rate map and to get kind of a staff presentation on it. There's a lot of information here for citizens and to garner any questions of council in that regard.
Mr. Mayor, if there's any citizen that would like to see a copy of the letter we're discussing, it's front and center on our website, and also you can see it linked to tonight's council agenda as well. We are in a period of providing comments of a non-technical nature on the updated, soon-to-be updated flood map, and staff will go through what that is. That's different than an appeal for a specific property. This is more jurisdictional boundaries, street names, things like that. It's helpful to me, and it may be helpful to you, to think about flood map and flood insurance sort of like this. This process is making sure that FEMA has accurate flood maps, accurate topography, and all of that, and they'll go into that. In a way, it's like our reassessment process, making sure that the value is correct. Members may have lots of questions about how it will affect flood insurance. That's a separate process from this, and your staff is trying mightily, but is an expert in neither one of those things. We will have representatives from FEMA here who are both experts in the map and in the flood insurance aspect for a meeting with you sometime, hopefully to be scheduled in the month of May. There will also be a public meeting as well, which will be open to the public, and folks will be able to ask questions. It's our intention to record both of those and rebroadcast them, because while we can say or restate what we hear them saying, they're the authorities and we are not. And so we'll go through this process, and before we start, would note that we did write recently, you wrote under your signature, Mayor, a request to FEMA to delay this process until we got the new LIDAR data that we expect to get later in the year. And I think it was Thursday afternoon, we received a letter back from them saying that request for extension was not granted, and that everyone should have a copy of that. And with that one, we asked the staff to sort of walk through where we are and what's coming, and then we'll try our best to answer your questions. But I expect a lot of them will be insurance related, and we won't know the answer. But what we'd like to do now and in the coming weeks, if you'll provide your questions for us, we'll provide them to the FEMA folks in writing in advance of the upcoming May meeting, and hopefully then we can go point by point addressing your questions, hopefully with an answer from them in writing, which then we can share out with the citizens as well. If that's all right, we'll proceed that way.
Okay. Who would like to start?
I'm going to defer to Ken. Ken is our certified floodplain manager, and he has the most contact with FEMA and is very well versed in this process. So he's going to present the process to you this evening.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, Council, on January 30th of 2013, we received the first color copy of the new maps. We were given those maps. The staff took them and we put all the panels together. We have attached them to the rear wall in City Council, or in City Hall. We've had a lot of positive comments from people given their ability to walk and see and ask questions. So they're the same maps we've had, they're just in a lot of different colored areas, and it's a very good set of maps. The biggest addition to those maps was what they call the Limois line, the line of intermediate or moderate wave action. So that's the key word you will hear. For a generic phrase for that would be called a coastal A zone. That's what a lot of people were calling it and stuff. A vertical, velocity zone, a V zone is a velocity zone, and it has wave action that's at 3 feet or higher. And then you go to and right now you go straight to an A zone, which doesn't have any wave action. And we all know that the wave is not going to stop at that one point. So studies have shown that the wave keeps moving in until it reaches a final leveling out point. The Lenoir line is designed to be a area that would be from 1.5 to 3 feet for wave action. And that's what, and right now, those maps are, those lines are just informational only. They're not mandatory that they are adopted. And so that would be something the council would have to look at. As you know, a letter was sent to you, it was dated February 20th and was sent to you as mayor, telling you that the official preliminary maps were out. So a couple of weeks after we got the first color set, we received the official maps. Staff has taken those, we have placed them together again, put all the panels together so we have an outline of the city. We're in the process now of working through, trying to make sure we have all the technical, that the boundaries are the jurisdictional boundaries are the same, roads are correct, names, et cetera. That's what the technical review period is for. We're going to take the maps and we're going to place them on the hallway wall right across from where the current maps are placed, so that way it'll make it easy for staff to do the review from one panel and turn around and check that panel. It also will give us the ability to make it easy to, if citizens should want or have questions or concerns or just need information, they'll be able to come in and we'll be able to show them our current map and then what is the proposed maps are coming and be in one central location. That'll be in the hallway leading to the community development hallway of City Hall, so those things will be open for people. Right now, the maps are preliminary in nature, and that's just because they, again, are looking to make sure we have all the technical information. And then after we have our meeting with FEMA, our official meeting with FEMA, then we would go into a 90-day appeal period for citizens. When that's all done, FEMA takes everything back and reviews it, and it could take 6 to 8 months to get the final formal maps adopted. Like I say, right now, we are in the process of reviewing them. We are looking to take the panels individually and compare them to the ones we have right now to see if we can address any areas that are changing, so we can try to notify the citizens that may be affected to see what the effects may be. FEMA has requested a meeting with council and staff and concerned citizens. And if we have other concerned or interested parties, I should say, not concerned, but interested parties, for May 16th, 2013, from 1 to 3 p.m. here in council chambers. And then speaking with the manager, he recommended that we would at least record that and be able to re-air it, which I thought was an excellent idea to get the information out. At that time, we will be able to ask specific questions of the FEMA representatives. We were hoping to be able to get somebody to come in earlier, but with the federal budget cuts, all travel has been curtailed through FEMA, so this is a trip that they have to make, so they will be down for that. Extra trips were not allowed. Once that meeting is over, the next day starts the official 90-day appeal period that a citizen would have. For a citizen to question or appeal the location of their property in a flood zone, or the elevation that the maps would show it being in, they would need to have substantial information to back it up, i.e. they would need an elevation certificate to work from. And that would give them the information. If they had an elevation certificate that had been prepared within the past 10 years, it's possible that FEMA would honor that and look at it from that. Beyond 10 years, the elevation certificates don't have as much information as FEMA needs now to make that determination. When they make a determination, it's possible to have a piece of property that could have several different flood zones labeled on. I'll use Dr. Null's property as an example. The back edge of his property is in a V zone, but then the rest of his property currently is in an AE zone. So his house is in an AE zone, so that's what he is rated at. So that's why when they do that, to do a letter of map amendment to get it changed, it's generally going to be the adjacent grade 5 feet around the structure is where they would be looking for. So that's when an elevation certificate gives them that information, and that would have to be done either by a surveyor or a licensed engineer or a licensed architect are allowed to do that. There's some parts, excuse me, there's some parts of an elevation certificate that staff can do, but it's only an administrative part, and then that still has to be approved by a surveyor, and we just recommend that the surveyor do the whole 9 yards, so they're going to be out there doing the paperwork anyway. And they're the ones that are going to verify site-specific information that would be needed. After we have that 90-day appeal period is closed, FEMA takes it back and starts the formal process of making the maps. At that point, then they would notify us and give us a specific date that the maps would be in effect and a specific date that we have to have our new revised flood ordinance approved. It would be just like last time. Right now, we don't know what that revised flood ordinance will look like. We will go through the process. We have to take what we have. We will send it to Department of Conservation and Recreation in Richmond. They review it. They make recommendations to us. We revise it. We send it back to Richmond. Richmond takes it from there, forwards it to FEMA. FEMA reviews it, sends it back to Richmond, and we do that hopefully one time, but it could be even several times, just depending on how they want to, what specific phrases or words that they want to look at. After that is done, then council would have to formally adopt our new flood ordinance and the new maps be effective on the specific date that FEMA is telling us that those would be into effect. When it comes time for the revised flood ordinance, there's a possibility that you may have other additional items that you would like to see implemented in our flood ordinance, and as long as they become more stringent or more, I won't say the word restrictive, but as long as we don't water it down or anything, we make it as what it is or better, then that's something that FEMA would consider. So between tonight and when we get to that point, if council, you have a chance to be thinking of different items. One of the items you may want to consider is adding additional freeboard. Currently, we have a 12-inch, you can have a minimum of 12 inches of freeboard to be a positive step. That's what we have currently. We can go up to 4 feet if we wanted to. There's pros and cons both ways. So if staff would, if council wants, you can be thinking of those things, and I can provide you any information you would need on the pros and cons. We could do another informational session. If citizens have questions on what is the advantage of doing certain things versus the disadvantage of doing it, those are things that we would be more than happy to help them on a one-on-one basis. Any way we can provide the information. If there's civic groups that would have an interest in having a meeting on that, we'd be more than happy to meet with them and try to provide as much information there as possible. In the process of doing what we have right now from FEMA, all the homes and the structures that have received a letter of map amendment that were granted going from an A zone to an X zone, all of those, we were notified of all those homes. Out of all of them, we have 4 homes that we're being told will not be recertified as being getting a letter of map amendment. We don't know why FEMA is not willing to recertify those 4 structures. What we're in the process now of doing is drafting a notice or a letter, informational letter for the citizen to make them aware that based off the information we have, they will not be able to get the same rates they have now when the new maps go into effect. The new maps most likely will be in effect sometime early part of 2014. A day after the new map is in effect, that's when they would lose their current status. So we wanted to provide them as much information as we can now, so they can, and ask them if they can contact us, so we can try to get some information, elevation certificates, et cetera, so we can see if there's ways we can help them or give them some guidance in the process. And then, so they will be as informed as possible when that 90-day appeal period starts, so they can start the process of asking for recertification. It's a good possibility they may still be able to be recertified, but currently, right now, that they said that there was 4 structures that won't be.
You talked about freeboard. Could you explain that? I missed the definition.
Okay, freeboard, I'm sorry, I apologize for not doing that. Freeboard we're required to have the finished part of a structure, the finished floor of it, has to be at or above base flood. That's the minimum requirement. Freeboard comes in 12-inch increments, so and FEMA encourages people to build higher than base flood, because we know that 1 inch of water will do as much damage or more than 12 inches of water, because it's going to ruin everything. So if we pick it up 1 foot, it's called freeboards.
Okay.
So you have 12 inches, and that's the minimum you can do to get credit for it. If you're below 12 inches, it's the equivalent of being
Okay.
At base
And base
flood.
flood is a determined by FEMA figure,
You're right, yes, sir.
elevation figure.
Right.
Okay.
All right, this is kind of FEMA 101, so let's kind of start again. Base flood elevation today is considered to be what?
It depends on the location of the property.
Okay,
On the maps will tell us a number. It will say, when looking at the maps, it will say AE8, AE7, 9, 10. That's the number of base flood, and that's figured off mean sea level.
okay, and our ordinance today requires your home to be what? At base floor level?
A minimum of 12 inches above base flood.
So we already have 1 foot of
Yes, sir.
freeboard in our current ordinances?
Yes, sir.
Can I ask, does our ordinance apply to all of the different zonings within, whether it's a E zone or a V zone?
Yes, ma'am. It's straight across the board. Our 1 foot of freeboard is straight across the board for everybody. The advantage is that they get a reduced insurance rate for 12 inches. When you go to the 13 inches to 24, you've automatically bought 24 inches of coverage. So when somebody goes that extra block up, they've did it, and if you go from 25 to 36, then you bought 3 feet. So it gives you an advantage there. Again, the higher you can go up to a 4 foot and have reduction of freeboard.
Okay.
You get they will see a substantial decrease in their insurance rates, because the higher you go up, the less chance there is of flooding, ductwork, insulation being wet, or anything like that.
Ken, you gave a date in May when they're gonna be here. Can you give me that date again?
Yes, sir. May 16th, from 1 to 3 is a date that FEMA had. They were requesting the meeting, and then they came back and said, this is when we'll be there with DCR, so.
We would
Does
request that all
the
of you
city still have the
here for
agreement
that.
with the engineer for the reduced cost of elevation
No, sir.
certificates?
No, sir. He said that Mr. Michaels did a large number of those.
Yeah, I know.
And he said that he had pretty much did what he could do, and what he felt was being the best he could do for the city.
Yeah.
It's benefited a lot of
It was
people
very
to be able to
helpful,
have
that's
that.
for sure, yeah.
Right. We are in the process also, like I said, we'll have the maps will be posted on the walls. Most of the staff is pretty versed in understanding how to read them and give them the information, and if not, they're very quick to make an appointment for me to meet somebody, which is fine. We'll take as long as it takes to walk somebody through the process. One of the advantages to the building, the layout we have is the long walls. We were able to keep the older set of maps we have too, so we're able to, I can start somebody at the very back and walk them through the maps, and they can see a progression of the evolution of the mapping itself. So it's a chance for us to spend as much time as necessary. Some people it's 5 or 10 minutes, other people I'll spend an hour with them until they feel comfortable having the basic information they need to make the best decisions possible for them.
Okay.
I do have the maps here, and if anybody was interested, I could show you the whole map. It's fairly big, or I can roll out a part of it. Like I say, the biggest change is the Limois line is on it, and again, it's just an informational line. And at this time, you would not have to adopt it. It's not enforceable unless you take specific action to adopt it.
Okay. Questions? I've got a few. Does anybody else, do y'all have some other information?
No.
Okay. All right. But I don't want to jump in there first.
Just, if you, on page, the letter from FEMA, just so I understand, the, number 2, the letter, the map change, those properties there are being given special consideration after the map comes out? Is that how I'm reading that? Have a 1-day
I'm sorry, what page were you on, sir?
See, I guess it's page 103,
I'm sorry. Okay, page 103, yes, sir.
preliminary summary of map actions. There's 3 different LOMACs or letters of map change. 2 of them have no cases, and the number 2 has got 9 in there. Can you explain that to me exactly what that means? This is like reading Greek to me. Not incorporated into the preliminary copies.
Right, the LOMAC is a letter of map consideration. What this basically is saying is that these individual homes have been granted letters of map amendment, and they didn't want to take it, didn't go in and want to show a little teeny tiny dot on the map for one parcel of being a Zone X. So when you look at you look at these addresses, the property around them is going to be in a flood zone, but that property itself is specifically not in a flood zone. Generally, they won't make a map change. They want to show a larger area. If you had a block of houses that are a large enough area, it would be shown on the map. But individual houses, they give the people the letter. Insurance knows it. When they figure their insurance rates, they know that they are not in a flood zone.
Okay, but their neighbors could very well be in a zone.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And generally, when we talk with the citizen and they ask about that, we go over the elevation certificate, and things we try to look and say, what is the elevation around the house? Would you be a candidate for this? And then if we think that they might have a possibility, we will, refer them or recommend that they would be go to a surveyor to try to get more specific information.
The certificate of elevation.
Right. At that point, if they have it, then, they can go through the formal process. And we also let them know, let your neighbors know. They may benefit from this also. If you have it, it may be something that would be beneficial for them. And a lot of times, that's how we get, the word of mouth process seems to be a very positive tool. On the next page, 2 of 3, those are the 4 addresses that, of properties that will not be.
For some reason, we don't have 2 or 3. I've seen it, but I didn't photocopy.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, we did it. But we will be contacting all 4 of those
Yes,
families.
we will be
and let
sending them
know.
formal notices, letting them know that, just as an informational tool, we want to make you aware that the city will be going through a new map process. It's come to our attention through this process that the letter of map amendments we received, and I'll reference the specific date, will no longer be in effect after the new maps are adopted.
So is it safe to say that on those 4 properties that you'll contact, they're looking at a substantial downgrade in their mapping? In other words, they're more susceptible to flood, or they've been upgraded?
Right now, we're not really sure.
You just know that they're changing,
Yes, sir.
and they're the only 4 properties within the city that...
Yes, sir.
That are subject currently to letters of map amendment.
Right.
That won't be honored going one to the next.
Okay.
The only reason we
Flood
don't,
zones
I'm
may
sorry.
change. I'm
Go ahead.
sorry, the actual flood zones may have changed because with this map change, they did a new hydraulic analysis. So it's still good to come in, Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, and check and see what's going on in your property. These 4 might have been in a situation where they were high enough to get out of their old flood zone, but not their new one. Or maybe FEMA just didn't look at them carefully enough and they should be out of it, so.
The reason we don't have any more information right now is we've never received an elevation certificate for these 4. We got the letter from FEMA saying it had been honored, or been granted, but we never have anything to back it up. So that's why part of the process of contacting them, we'll be asking them if they would bring us a copy of their elevation certificate. 1, so we will have it for our file, and then 2, so we can try to start the process to try to help them find anything we can to get them where they can get reclassified back into a next zone.
Okay. I think it's, does anybody else got any questions? I think it's safe to assume that most citizens, heck, probably half of council, is not as up to speed on this process as we need to be. That's why we asked for the extension. That was denied. That's okay, because what you're basically saying is that this is a non-technical review at this point in time. But I guess what the important information for citizens to take away from this particular work session is that, one, they need to get engaged. They need to understand what FEMA is saying about their property, for it could affect their flood insurance rates substantially or on the positive side. Either way, you need to be engaged. That citizens can also leverage off of what we know. In other words, there's some properties in here that have done certain things that they may be adjacent to, and that they can leverage off of that. And that even though this is the non-technical review, we really want the citizens to come and take a look. Is it possible that we could set up basically a public session? I liked your idea about going to the various clubs and whatever and giving maybe a presentation, but I'm wondering if we should just open it up to a couple nights work session, just in case. Because the one thing I would tell you, and the same thing with FEMA when they come on the 16th, they're coming from 1 to 3. A lot of people are at work. Is it?
But a lot of people are at ball games.
Thursday.
Well, all I'm saying is it would be nice of FEMA to come when most people could actually come and comment. So I would like to ask if they would be so gracious as to come back after the normal working hours of 1 to 3 to receive public comment, which this is a public process and we want them to hear from the public. Either by expanding those hours from, say, 1 to 6, or delaying their particular time if they only have 2 hours to give, because that's all they'll get paid for or whatever.
But could I ask a question of clarification? Because I've actually heard this both ways, and that's pretty typical, actually, dealing with this process. My understanding is that the next meeting is what they call the community meeting, which is not the public meeting, meaning they're inviting you all, they're inviting staff, and they don't do a great job of defining interested parties in their letter. But there's also contemplated a second public meeting, and I'm not sure when that is. It'd be great, actually, if it was the same day, like you said, have it later that evening in here for as long as it takes. We'll see if we can't get that done.
Right.
But there will be that process. But I really commend Ken and his thought that we need to start talking about this now. And I agree with you 100%. People need to understand what the federal government is saying about their property. And this memo, which is again on our website, has the links to where you can go look at the map yourself online.
Very
or
good.
you can come in here or both. We are here to help people, but as I said, we're not experts in this process by any stretch. We're just trying real hard to help people. So our judgment is in no way should be substituted for their own judgment. They should look at their own property, and we can help them.
Okay. And then council will need to consider the one thing I heard you say, where we will go into this, is when we approve the ordinance. I think I heard you say that the line of title intrusion is something that council can or cannot factor into their thoughts.
Yes, sir.
And I guess to help us with that process would be if we've had any losses to waive action. True waive action losses. And because I hate to approve lines of what could happen when most places, I can think of maybe one particular area that's open to waves. I can think of many more that are open to tide but not waves. And I want to make sure that we understand what the decision that we've got coming down the pike is.
Were you basically saying that, that they have the new line that shows the end of wave action? What do you call that line now, Ken? Landmark, okay. That historically, there's been no wave action and there's been no damage caused by wave action, but now the line is there, okay? And so that line may not really be applicable, right? However, if you remember, the last time they came for us to approve the new map, they didn't ask us if we wanted to, they gave us a date that we would do it by, or else they would remove us from the flood insurance
I agree
program.
100%. That's why I wanted to make sure that we frame what council's going to be on the hook for, which is that whether we're going to have an option on that line or not.
Yes, sir.
That will be important for us to know, because I'm assuming that line could only lead to higher rates.
Well,
I mean, I'd have to say that there's a reason for that line.
Well, eventually, I
Didn't
think,
help us.
maybe I'm wrong on this, Ken, but it's possible that several years down the line, they may say you have to build to beach house standards if you're within the LIMWAs. That seems to be where the process is heading. The line is based, where they drew the line and where they put all the flood zones is based on hydraulic models of an idealized storm. It's not based on what happened in the past necessarily. And the advantages of going ahead and applying those beach house standards, for lack of a better term, now might be a reduction in insurance rates for people who meet that standard.
And
But
no
that's a
doubt that we,
voluntary thing at this point.
no doubt that we could change our ordinances to do that without approving a line on the FEMA map.
Absolutely.
Is that right? No, I just,
Yeah.
I've seen good things out of FEMA, and I've seen some things that really punish or are a coastal community. What I keep going back to is Isabel was a very bad experience. FEMA was a very good partner during that. And we've put a tremendous amount of investment, both with FEMA dollars and with local dollars, into hardening the city for these types of storms. FEMA's been back, I'm almost thinking this is their third time back that they've come. But we just did maps 2 years ago, 3 years ago. We seem to be in this repetitive thing, and I know that storms are bad across the country, but I want to make sure that Poquoson gets the credit that it's due. When you look at the losses from Isabel and you look at the losses from the last 2 to 3, I think it tells a story. And what I want to make sure is that if we change the ordinances for beach-type housing or beach-type construction standards, that we do that because that's the right thing to do for Poquoson. But I'll be quite honest with you, I'm scared of a line that FEMA draws and that they set rates on. And that would be why I'm asking the question, is it going to be optional or not?
Right.
If we decide that that's what we want to do, we can go do that. People can still get the credit for it through this process. They built the beach standards because the city ordinance requires that. But those that are in that zone, that were in that zone, potentially we're doing them a disservice by just taking the line and saying, this is good to go.
Okay.
I hope I explained myself well.
Right now, everything we have been told is that line is quote-unquote informational only. Now, what that means in the world of the federal government, how long it will be, we have no idea. I think the manager hit it perfect. We're not experts, and we're trying to get the information we can, and we're trying to nail it down, and we're trying to nail down a moving target to get answers. To try to get information to answer, parts of your questions. We haven't been able to get specific information, and we're hoping that, and I thought the manager's idea was excellent, if we get a set of questions that we can provide FEMA ahead of time, and we can hit those points bullet by bullet and to cover those things in the meeting they give us. So we'll be able to get information we need, staff needs to do our job, but as important, information you as council need so you can make the best decision for what is going to be the best for Poquoson. Is the Limwa line the best thing? That was a matter of opinion.
I understand.
One of the things is, it doesn't mean that if you went with that, would not mean that every house had to be built on piles. You can have a standard foundation. You just have to have breakaway walls. And then the next big item is that we're currently in an A zone the finished floor has to, our ordinance says 12 inches above base flood. In a V zone or in a beach style house, the lowest structural member, the bottom of that has to be would have to be at least 12 inches above. So we're talking probably 2.5, 3 feet per house would have to go up higher.
I'm all about doing the right thing for
Right.
construction standards and for, people's protection when they build it one time, But I just want to make sure that we're aware that FEMA uses these for other things. We're only dealing with the technical side of the house, the mappers. Then there will be the insurance agents that don't get to listen to that phone call or that briefing, and they'll say, here's the line.
Yes, sir.
And I just want to make sure that we recognize there's two different entities there,
Right.
and that we're aware of that process and then the process of piling on by homeowners insurance to what FEMA's got.
In reference to your question about, it was November of 2011 that the current maps were adopted, and we were one of the last jurisdictions in the state to get those maps updates, and we were the first jurisdiction to get the new revised maps.
So maybe that's why we feel like they're just coming back again and again.
So it was why Poquoson was
We
first.
volunteered to slow it down, and we had a really good reason other than simply wanting to slow it
Yeah,
down.
that was,
The best possible elevation data is a pretty good reason, and apparently insufficient to slow them down.
all right, so staff would like any input from council on questions that we would like to send to FEMA in advance of the April meeting, is that
Yes,
right?
sir.
May.
May,
The
I'm
May
sorry.
16th meeting.
So when would you like to have a cutoff for us to get you?
Defer to the manager on that.
Well, I think we could take them at any time, but it would be maybe best if maybe by the end of the month. If you at least had your initial questions, we could, you can email them straight to Ken if you want, or give him a call. But we'll compile them and we'll send them, and then we can send an amended list later if other things come up.
And then we could ask that night, but I'm just saying, that gives them,
Yeah, we can go, let's go down the question list you got
Agreed.
in advance, and hopefully we'll request the answers in writing
Right.
as well, so that at least we got something to stand on.
The good part about the meeting will be there, one of the people that will be coming down is a FEMA insurance specialist. He is also the chief, the head person in Region 3 in Philadelphia, but his specialty is insurance.
okay,
And I've had a few conversations with him and in reference to what would the Limois lines be, insurance-wise, et cetera. And he gave me some preliminary information, but we would like to get something concrete that we can say, this is what FEMA told us by this person on this date, so this is what we're moving forward with.
agree.
Without prolonging this, but if you allow me, Ken said it perfect. We're trying to nail down a moving target. I would have said trying to nail Jello to a wall, but you get the same sort of thing. This time last year, if you would have asked someone in FEMA insurance how it worked, they would have told you. But this past summer, there was a major change in the law. So even if they think it's voluntary and they're being 100% truthful, and I'm sure they would be, those laws are changed. And I'm like you, I'm nervous. First, saying that we know what'll happen 10 years from now, that's impossible to know. But I'm mindful of the fact that they're going to continue to make changes as a little insurance corporation, not little, huge insurance corporation, to bring their bottom line in at least not into the red. And I have no idea what sequestration and other budget things will do, but that insurance company is losing money and it's subsidized by the federal taxpayer. So they're going to continue to make changes beyond the changes they've made until such time that that's not the case. And so whatever we think we know is subject to change.
I think it's a good point. So I guess, again, reaching out to the citizens, we're telling you what's going on, we're asking you to come City Hall, ask questions, all that you can. We may even take your question and send it up to FEMA if we don't know the answer.
Most
So
definitely.
we'll help in any way that we can, but it's
a great
your
idea.
property and you're right.
If folks want to mail their questions, especially if they're not specific to their property, but
Right.
a more general question to Ken, we'll include it in the list.
Right.
And we'll find a way to get their specific question referenced, it just may be a different way.
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay, nothing else on the work session, right? Okay, we'll adjourn till 7. Thanks.